Welcome to Season 8 of the Charity Matters podcast. I'm Heidi Johnson, nonprofit founder, lifelong helper, and your host. I've been interviewing modern-day heroes for over a decade with my blog, and I'm so excited to share these inspiring conversations with our podcast. Join me as we learn the challenges and stories, innovators, entrepreneurs, and modern-day heroes who set out to solve the problems of humanity. Did you know that there are over 350 million families in our world dealing with rare diseases? That's 1 in 10 families in the United States and 1 in 15 families worldwide. Today's guest, Crystal Barrett O'Loughlin, is the founder of RareGivers Global, and I'm so excited to share her remarkable journey and our conversation about what she's doing to make an incredible difference in our world. I'm so excited to have Crystal Barrett O'Loughlin joining us today from RareGivers Global. Welcome, Crystal. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Heidi, and thank you for writing your book and creating a place for us to be able to connect and talk about the good work we're doing in the world.
Oh, well, thank you. I have to say, I mean, to me, some people collect like statues and dolls and all sorts of different things. And I collect nonprofit founders because I collect the best of humanity. I mean, there's no greater joy than I have than A, having these conversations with people like amazing people like you, and B, sharing the conversations. Because when you have something so joyful, you want everyone to have it. So it is such a gift for me to have you and to share your story today. So I'm really excited. So let's just kind of dive in before we get into the whole story, which is really amazing. Tell us a little bit about what RareGivers Global does.
Okay, fantastic. And of course, I thought I was going to do this without my glasses, but I'm just going to put them on. Y'all can get used to me with that.
Well, we only have some YouTube. Most are listening, so they won't see it, and some on YouTube will see your glasses. So there you go.
Fair enough. Okay, great. So, RareGivers cares for the caregivers. We are all about providing emotional relief services to caregivers that are living in really, what we call a radical caregiving environment.
Right.
We work specifically with patients and parents and the healthcare professionals in rare, chronic, and complex diseases. So there's about 10,000 uncured rare diseases that have been genetically identified. And it's not a small community. It's the wrong word. Rare makes it sound super rare, but the rare disease community is actually 1 in 10 families in the United States and 1 in 15 worldwide. So these are your neighbors. These are your friends. These might even be family members, extended family members, certainly colleagues at work as well, and in society. And we just have a fundamental belief that when life gets medical, people get emotional. And our healthcare system is really set up to try to go straight to treatments and fixes. But before that happens, we really feel like we need to address feelings first, because it's the emotional side of this that can just
it's the humanity, right? It's why we do this, is to help other people. And yet the healthcare system, there isn't anyone listening to this that hasn't had a frustrating phone call with an insurance company, with a medical provider, with a pharmacy, with anything medical, that the humanity is what's missing. And you are, I mean, it's everything, right? And so I love that that's what you're doing, is putting that back, and that emotional care that we so desperately need, especially families dealing with someone that they love that has a chronic illness that is a rare disease. But I think it's so fascinating that it's not rare. That's completely news to me, 1 in 15. So before we get into the story, which is amazing, I'm just curious, because every nonprofit founder knows the moment that they decided to do this, or what their story is that triggered it. At least everyone that I've interviewed, and there's been hundreds. But I always wonder, no one ever wakes up and says, when I grow up, I want to be a nonprofit founder. There's a lot of pieces that go into your puzzle before that journey happens. But growing up, I know that you have four older brothers, but growing up, did your family, did you have any role models that were giving back? Is this something that you saw or something that was always in you before everything kind of transpired? And I'm not trying to like jump ahead, but
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
No, no. I mean, it's kind of hard to decouple the life experience
Right.
with the mentorship. I've had really incredible mentors from a philanthropic standpoint. Dan Pelota, we could talk about him, but he's just
Wow.
the godfather of philanthropy.
Yeah, he
Got
is.
the most watched TED Talk on
Right.
charitable causes. Um, but I was really born into this. I'm the youngest of
Right.
four, and three of my four older brothers had a rare genetic disease, and so the whole family unit was organized around caregiving.
Right.
My brothers gained and lost their ability to walk and talk from a rare genetic disease called Hunter's syndrome or mucopolysaccharidosis. And so there's no decoupling like how I
Right.
grew up, right? Because
Because you grew up in the rare
you're
disease
in
space
service
with
because
it, right?
yeah, you have to be because the medical.
Right.
And this is why I say it's really interesting. People will say, "Oh, you do caregiver support, right?" And isn't that just parenting? And I'll be like, "No, no, no. This is not. This
No.
is not. And it's hard enough to be a parent. I mean, shout out to all the mothers in
Right.
the
Amen.
village, right, of people that
Right.
are
Amen.
caring for loved ones. But this is really radical caregiving. This is 24/7 medical management at home. This is doing skilled nursing
Right.
interventions.
Right.
I've got people, administering epileptic medications every hour on the hour, 24/7 for decades, right?
Right.
You can imagine that. So that was our life experience. It's hard to decouple the two.
So when did you have a moment that you knew you needed to do this? Was there a moment where all the pieces came together? And maybe take us kind of through the journey of what that looks like. Because almost every nonprofit founder I've ever interviewed can say the lightning bolt or when the pieces came together or the aha, whatever you want to call it, that, oh my gosh, I have to do this. And
Yes.
there's no going and
Yes.
you're going to do this. So talk us through kind of that, how you got to that
I
and maybe
love
a little
that.
bit more about your brothers.
Sure, absolutely. And you even mention it in your book in Change for Good, the impact of mortality events. So I
Mhm.
think there is a moment in your life where you realize you're mortal, right? And
Right.
so where you're like, wait a second, I may not be on the planet as long as I thought I was going to be, or
Right.
that this is not a dress rehearsal. This is one life, one opportunity,
Yep.
to make your mark. And so specifically in the Barrett family, my parents met and married. They met when they were 15. He was captain of the
Oh.
football team. She was head track team
Oh.
leader. They had their big, beautiful life ahead of them. They got married at 19. They told their pediatrician, we would like a big family, keep an eye on us. So they had five children within 8 years, right? So
Wow.
rapid
Boom,
succession.
boom, boom. Right.
What my mother didn't know is that she was the carrier for Hunter syndrome or mucopolysaccharidosis, which is a missing enzyme in boys. So her boys had a 50-50 chance of having the disease.
Wow.
And the girls have a 50-50 chance of being a carrier but not having the disease. So
Okay.
my
Interesting.
oldest brother didn't have Hunter. And then she was having David, Jared, Randy, and she could see that they weren't developing the same as Richard, the
Right.
oldest, right?
Right. Right.
Having harder times lifting their head, crawling, walking, just delayed motor skills, delayed, babbling, things like that. So
Right.
eventually they figured out it's Hunter syndrome. There's no cure. So your blood runs cold and when you go into a grief cycle, and it's a very the stages of grief, right? Anger, denial, anger,
Denial. Right.
bargaining, all of these experiences. And for decade or for years, they really hoped that there would be a miracle.
Right.
And work to just kind of accept the experience. And as kids, we were just in the backyard playing and, doing our
Right.
thing, right? So I wasn't
Back
know.
when people just did that, kids just roamed until the streetlights came on, right?
Yeah, you don't when you are in a special needs family, you don't realize necessarily maybe until a little older what you're missing. I didn't really realize that
Right.
my
You
brothers
just know
weren't
what you
using
know.
words.
Right.
Yeah, they were just
Right.
using, grimaces and, pulls and pushes and hair pulling and just sort of we would play like puppies more than
But
anything.
you understood them because this is what you knew and you were the baby. So they were telling you how to communicate.
You have that. You have that. But the catastrophic impact on the family is on the caregiver, on the parents,
Right.
right? So
Right.
they have the anticipatory grief. They know that the boys are going to pass, right? And so I was 10 when my brother Randy passed, and he was 12. And he was the youngest of the three. And so there's these weird hierarchies in grief where you're like, wait, of course the oldest is going to pass first, but it
Right.
wasn't. It was the youngest. And it just
Oh,
shocked everybody. And so I learned really early to bring love and positivity into the family, that was my
oh,
contribution as the youngest, because I was always being cared for. Um,
right.
and I think that that has pulled me into all sorts of like heart-led work or communities. I always want to be in environments where I can give back. Pi Beta Phi at UCLA, IBM Life Sciences, always wanting to have some sort of meaningful element to the work that
Right.
I'm doing. But that moment, and this is like you asked this question forever,
Right.
that moment was far after my brothers had passed. So, they died at 12,
And
18, and 19 years old.
wow, 12, 18, and
12,
19.
18, and 19. I was 10, 14, and 15 when they passed, right? And so for the next
Oh,
10, 15
God, that
years,
just like uh, it's just unimaginable, right?
right? It hits you
And
and you deny it. Like, none of
the
us, after my brothers passed, none of us wanted to think about it anymore. We were all grieving, but
well,
we
you
all,
have three people in your family that are three people that are gone. Like you're basically your peanut butter and jelly.
yeah,
Your older brother and you are the bread,
right.
and your peanut butter and jelly is gone. Like the
Yeah,
glue in the middle is
right,
gone.
right, right.
Oh, that
And
just right.
My parents
Of
divorced, right?
course.
Like
Well, that's
beautiful
just not
couple,
shocking. Like,
no.
how can you manage that
And
pain,
all the
right?
difficult things that happen to people happen deeply and more intensely to rare disease families. So rates of
Right.
addiction, rates of depression and anxiety, 80% of caregivers in rare disease families are dealing with anxiety and depression. The rates of divorce are 6 times higher. The rates of addiction,
Wow.
5 times higher. So you have all these impacts, and I will tell you a Hollywood ending to this story as we get close to the end of the podcast. So stick it out if you want to
Okay. No,
hear
yeah. Well, I
hear the
love the
Hollywood
teaser. I
ending.
love the teaser.
But
So
that
when
that
so
that
you're going
moment,
through your life, right? You
yep.
lose your brothers, you go off to college, you're UCLA, sorry, I'm a Trojan, fight on. And but I love the healthy
But
rivalry.
Bruins,
And you're having, you're starting your career, like you're doing all the things. You're doing all the things. And then what happened?
yeah. So then I got into childbearing years, right? And
Right?
I started thinking about starting a family. And so then genetics comes back into your life, right? And by now,
Yeah.
the community had the options for genetic testing
To
and
test.
to think
Right.
about had really shifted at that point. But I went to UCLA and I said, listen, I've been told that I was not a carrier. I was an amniocentesis baby. I was one of the first. And
Oh
they said,
wow.
girl, and she doesn't have the disease and she's not a carrier.
Right.
So I didn't really worry about that. But then I was retested and actually found out that I was a carrier. So the
Oh,
testing isn't always accurate, and that's a
interesting.
little frustrating. And based on that, I went to a family conference. So when you get a genetic diagnosis, whether it's as a patient or as a caregiver or as a carrier, you start, looking into where you can go to get more information. So I get on a plane
Right.
with my dad and I fly to University of Washington and I go to the National MPS Family Conference and I walk in the door with my father and we look around and there are all these young men, these boys that look like my brothers.
Oh,
So
it just gave me chills.
it was
That
like
just that just gave me
it
chills.
it was unbelievable, and because there's a look to Hunter
Right.
boys, and
Right.
so they have they present similarly, and my dad and I just looked and we both just started, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I said, "What do you want to do?" And my dad said, "I need to go to the bar and have a beer." And I was
Oh,
okay, let's
I
go.
don't blame him. I would have just burst into tears because grief triggers are real. And to see even someone who looks like someone you've lost, like I can't, and so many, I can't even imagine how
It,
painful that has to be.
it was so
I
painful.
can't even.
It's washing over me again, and even just remembering that. But
Uh,
that was the moment. You asked for the moment. That was
yeah,
the
no,
moment. I was
I
like,
mean, I have chills.
gotta do it. I can't believe that families are still suffering from Hunter syndrome in
Right.
this
And this
way
is how
over
many
where
years later that you're at the
decades late, right?
conference?
15 years after
Wow.
brother passed.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
so I came home and we always did these Monday night pie fate. Even though we had graduated, we still got together on Monday nights. We'd watch, Ally McBeal or,
Right. Right.
Melrose Place or whatever was going on
Right.
at the time.
Right.
And I said to my girlfriends, there's a part of my history that I've never really shared with you. Can you imagine? I
Mm.
never even talked to my
Wow.
best friends
No.
about it,
Wow.
period. And I said I want to do something, and so we started a fundraising organization called Angel Aid, and we started it as Angel Aid because that was the Pi Beta Phi symbol.
Right.
And Angel is a moniker, ANGEL, a nonprofit group enriching lives. So we were not a
Oh,
501(c)(3), but we were a fundraising arm of the National MPS Society. And we work from our strengths, and this goes into recommendation
right.
for people that want to give back. Work from your strengths and don't take on too much because we didn't want to do
Well,
the vetting.
right.
We didn't want to do the
Excuse me,
scientific,
that's a slippery slope.
yeah.
That's a slippery slope, right?
Yeah, and so we just said we're 20 something year olds. We're going to throw epic parties, which we did on Sunset Boulevard, and we're
I
going to take
love
all that
that.
money and we're going to mail the check to the National MPS Society, and we're going to have the National MPS Society do the governance. We're going to have them do the awards.
Oh, brilliant.
And so what
Excuse
happened
me.
is our very first research grant took us a while to make $50,000, but we did. And then our very first research
And what
grant,
year was this? Per se.
this was in 2002.
Okay. Oh, that's so
Started
same
in
year I started mine.
2000. It took us
Started
2
mine.
years.
Yeah.
We got a matching grant with National NPF Society. So we sponsored this research by Dr. Emil Caucus. And I mention him because he was out of UCLA. Go Bruins. Had to get my Bruins again. And he was studying this remote disease that only had 3,000, cases worldwide. And he had this very elegant idea that if the kids are missing the enzyme, they need to break down certain kinds of glucose, then let's create a synthetic version of that enzyme and we'll flush it through their body like dialysis. So enzyme
Oh, interesting.
therapy was what it was called. And it was such a simple concept, right? And guess what? It works. So it works. So our first research grant went on to become an FDA approved treatment. It was launched by BioMarin and Genzyme Pharmaceuticals for a sister disease, MPS 1 first. And then later, that ERT capability was adopted and launched by Shire, who was purchased by Takeda Pharmaceuticals. So now we've witnessed the full cycle of the philanthropy. We're going to do
Wow.
this. We're going to raise money. We went through FDA approval. We went through clinical trial. And now young men that would have passed away in their teens are going off to college. So that's
Unbelievable.
amazing, right? That's like
So
our world. Yeah.
So let's rewind a little bit
Okay.
because you're working, you're having children, or maybe not quite yet, but
Mhm.
you have a full life
Yes.
and you're doing this on the side,
On the side.
which is because no one wakes up and says, I'm going to start a nonprofit. Like there's so many things that happen to this path. There's so many, steps and stones laid along the way that lead us down this journey.
Yes.
But what were the challenges when I mean, I love kind of that we fast forwarded and saw like you guys start something and ta-da, it fixes something. Like it is not that simple. There's a lot of things that happen between that. And first of all, bravo, because that's just amazing in itself. Because the wonderful, crazy thing is that when you're doing something great, good things keep happening and it keeps you doing more and going forward, which is, I think, also why you were led to that success, because it's such a beautiful thing that you're doing. But there are challenges in all of that. So what were some of the challenges of juggling everything and trying to do this casually
On the side, right? Yeah,
on
casually
the
on the
side?
side.
Like, what were some
Sure,
of those
sure.
challenges like? Because you're an entrepreneur, you're starting a business, even though you kind of think, oh, we're just fundraising. We're just fundraising. But it's more than just fundraising, as you know.
Yes, it is. So the challenge is missions morph. That's the other thing, right? So
Yeah. We'll get to that too.
that
Yeah.
was the launch of Angel Aid, but Angel Aid was the precursor to RareGivers.
Right.
So we have a
Right.
whole evolved
Right.
now that came about because of this challenge. Okay. And here's the challenge. So there's no cures for any
Right.
of these diseases, even though we've witnessed that full cycle of philanthropy and we're patting ourselves on the
Right.
shoulder and we're witnessing transformational change in
Right.
the community. It's not a cure. It's a treatment. It's a
Right.
treatment. And it's a profound treatment. And I mentioned 10,000 rare diseases, 1 in 10, 1 in 15 worldwide. That's 350 million families, right? So there's
Wow.
only treatments for 5% of that community. So the challenge is the
Wow.
other 95% have no options, none, right? There is
Wow.
treatment management. They're going through the same cycles that the Barrett family went through, and holding hope and grief in the same heart every single day, right? And what happened in 20, I always thought I would do more Angel Aid work and in my retirement years, right? Oh, I'll do
Right.
I'll keep throwing fundraisers
Right.
at least once a year, and we would experiment with the fundraisers. Sometimes we would do them in person, then things kind of went online and we started doing them
Right.
remotely. I remember one year we did a fundraiser in 3 different cities simultaneously, San
Oh,
Francisco,
wow.
and New York, and that was like
Wow.
cool to test that, and we raised tons of money that way. But what hit my heart was when I became the patient. So in 2016, I was working at IBM, and I went in and I got a routine mammogram, and I came out with a breast cancer diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh no. Um, well, there's another shift in mortality, right?
Right.
I may never make it to retirement, right? Let alone
Right.
now I have a 10-year-old, I'm married, I have a 10-year-old daughter. I actually wasn't working at IBM. Now that I think about it, I was working with IBM, but I had launched an
Right.
advertising agency. So I was already doing this kind of entrepreneurial thing, but still running Angel Aid parties on the side. And what hit my heart was, what am I waiting for? This community, what that I thought my community was the MPS community. But then I realized actually my community is not 3,000 families, it's
It's all of the
350
families.
million families. It's this much
Wow.
broader community. And it was blowing my mind. I was waking up, and you can probably remember this, and I'm sure many other founders too. It's like I was waking up every single night and I was like, what are they all doing? They must all be in emotional crisis. Like, who's
Right.
caring for these people emotionally? I know what the researchers and the scientists are doing. I
Well,
know
you lived with it. You
I
watched I mean, as a child, you didn't realize what you didn't know. But looking back now, you're thinking, who was helping my mom? Who
who
was
was
helping my
helping my
dad?
mom? Who was helping
Right.
my dad and my brother? And who was helping me
Right.
even like process this?
Right.
right?
Right.
And what kept hitting my heart was I got diagnosed with breast cancer, and thankfully it was early, got the double mastectomy, went through treatment. I'm 8 years
Right.
cancer free now. But the thing
Rock
is,
on.
I got
Congrats.
I know, right? Shout out to all the cancer
Right.
and really just survivors. But um, I got so much support in breast cancer. People like start bringing meals. There was
Right.
social awareness around breast cancer and what to do. And there was
Right.
this like healthcare awareness of what to do. Every doctor
Right.
would ask, how are you
Right.
doing emotionally? How are
And
you?
I've interviewed the founders of the BCRF, and I mean, yeah, not Evelyn because she passed, but I interviewed her co-founder, and it's the same thing. There was nothing at the time. There was nothing, and they created that. But look, I mean, look at what. But you notice a disparity between look what breast cancer is doing, and what
Right.
about all these millions of people
So
that are
totally. So,
left
so here
behind?
I am. So I'm a strategist, right? Because my brain goes click, 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 click all the time. So I'm like laying in bed in the middle of the night and I'm going, wait a second, here's the numbers 350 million people. There's only treatments for 5%, 10,000 rare diseases, there's no cures.
Right.
That community needs emotional support. Where are good examples of emotional support? Military and veterans, care
Right.
circles,
Right.
senior care, Alzheimer's,
Right. Right.
breast cancer, and cancer care. So in
Right.
those communities, we have done so much, right? And how did
Right. Right.
it started with nonprofit founders
Yes.
decided to do these
Yes.
big major global
Yes.
campaigns, right? And
Right.
so I was like, oh, actually, it started with marketing. That I know how to do. So
Right.
what am I waiting for? We got to get the word out and we got to get it out
Right.
in a profoundly large way, but in a systemically thoughtful way, right? So we need to bring the relief first, and then we need to show how to bring the relief, and then we need to make adoptable solutions for bringing the emotional relief. And then we just need to market the heck out of it on a global basis. So,
I think it's so fascinating as I'm seeing every puzzle piece of your life snap together as you
yeah,
explain each piece. I
yeah,
mean, literally, you have this family that has Hunter syndrome. You then, you go into marketing and you go into the sales business, but then you do fundraising. You do all these puzzle pieces that lead you to all of this. And then your breast cancer diagnosis is the piece that says, oh my gosh, now I need to take this to the next level. And this is what we're gonna rebrand and we're gonna do. And rebrand, which is your marketing. And and there is Rare Givers Global. I mean, it's it's unbelievable. The rear view mirror is really like as you've heard me speak, is really what I think is fascinating. But talk to me when those days are hard, you're dealing with your own mortality potentially, you're raising a child, you're fundraising, you're starting a nonprofit. What fueled you in those moments to keep doing all of this? Because this is extra. This is not like
yeah,
right, right.
right,
This
right,
is like, I
yeah,
don't know what it is. It's it's
yeah.
it's our lives, but it's
Mhm, mhm.
it's a lot, right? It's a lot. And as I say all the time, it's a business model. Oh, I love that. It's a business model that she's, for those who are listening, she's holding Crystal's holding up a Wonder Woman mug because she is a Wonder Woman. But for those of us that, we still have laundry, we still have household, families, children, life, and yet we can't stop. So what fueled you? What was your fuel that made you not stop during all of this?
Yeah, yeah. Well, certainly Chloe. Chloe is my daughter, and my mother, Phyllis. So in the three of us, you have three generations of women that are all rare disease carriers. My
Wow.
mother didn't have that knowledge, that she was a carrier. I had the knowledge because of the genetic testings.
Right.
I went into family planning, and we were fortunate to have Chloe. And then my daughter is a carrier. And
Wow.
so when you layer on the breast cancer diagnosis in this heart for philanthropy and wanting to make a difference, but then you put the pressure cooker of you don't know if you're going to be on the planet forever. It's like,
Right.
how am I going to teach my daughter, my 10-year-old, how to move through the world? And it doesn't mean that she
Wow.
has to be a patient advocate for the rest of her life. It doesn't
Right. Right.
he has to even lean in on rare disease at all. But when I have the time and her attention, because she lives in my house, I'm going to show her how to make meaning out of a really difficult situation. So she's been our number one volunteer for the last 8 years. She's 18.
Yay.
We've been to Capitol
We need
Hill.
all the philanthropists in the world we can get. So I love that you're
You got
you're
it.
building another one.
You got
Go,
it. You got
Chloe.
it. And she's advocated for newborn screening in met with Kamala
Oh, good.
Harris's office, has met with our senators, our House of Representatives on both sides, Democrat, Republican, Independent, you name it, anybody that
Fantastic.
to providing funding and support for rare disease legislation is really important. So she's kind of grown up in that environment, and it inspires me. Let me tell you why my mother inspires me. My mother inspires me because, as I mentioned to you, my parents divorced, and my mother went on a very deep, dark journey with alcohol,
Oh,
with gambling, with any really kind of escape mechanism
right.
could find
To
to
deal with the pain.
her grief.
Right. Right. Of course.
She said at one point, the grief was so intense, it felt like her fingertips were bleeding.
Hmm.
We can't imagine
That's
the choices that my family's had to make.
right.
And somewhere along the way, her faith pulled her through and she got sober. She came back to me, as the
Oh,
daughter. She came back to me. I'm gonna cry now. I mean, she showed up for my daughter and my family in a way that was really profound. And she actually
so beautiful.
reconnected with my father and did a lot of really healing conversations that I think he never would have been able to have unless she was, present,
Oh,
open-minded. So what fuels me is very personal, but it's also, I think, an example of what can happen in rare disease families if you tend
right.
to the emotional side, if you go into
Right.
dark places.
Do right and do
There's
the
no
work.
joy without pain. There's no light
Right.
without dark. This is the yin
Right.
to the yang. This is the joy to the grief, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so we hold space for that at Rare Givers. My mother attends every single support group we have, every retreat we have, on our
Oh,
board of directors, and Chloe's witnessed that. So yeah, so that's what fuels
that
me.
is
I witness the
beautiful.
healing.
That is beautiful. So
Yeah.
talk to me. I mean, I hate the word impact because as nonprofits we kind of get held to this standard of what does that look like and how you can measure what your family's been through. There's no measuring that. There's no
Right.
measuring what a family with rare disease is going through and how you can support. There's no statistic. I mean, there is quantitative and qualitative, data. But talk to me how you measure success and what that looks like for you, because I think that it isn't just the statistics, but how do you feel? What does success look like for you at Rare Givers?
Yep. Well, remember, I'm a marketer, so if you can't measure it, don't do it.
Right? It didn't
So
happen,
I'm
right?
gonna throw all of that loving, it's okay,
Right.
measurement of the heart, and I'm gonna say, if you can't measure it, it's
Right.
really hard to get the funding to sustainably support your mission-driven work if you're
Right.
not measuring it.
Right.
So we
Correct.
started from a North Star, which is we want to be the catalyst for change. Remember, 350 million families, no
Right.
cure. So how are we going to change things on a global basis? So we knew a couple of things. Has to be mobile first. Has to be mobile
Smart.
first. Has to
Right.
be multilingual because we're not just operating
Right.
in the United States in English, we're operating globally, and there's 6,000
Wow.
languages on the planet. And if you want to talk
How
to
many languages?
6,000 languages,
Who knew? I did not
on
know
the
that
planet.
either.
Yep.
Wow, I learn
Yes.
something new every day. Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
400 primary languages, 6,000 dialects across the globe. So if you're going to be talking to people about their feelings, you need to be talking in their mother tongue. right? We
Right.
need to be
Right.
talking in their language. So if we're going to reach, 350 million people in language in remote rural areas, okay, how are we going to do that? So we have to have a talking tool on a page, one single piece of paper that everybody looks at and they can relate to. And so
Wow.
we went into the data and we did a meta study and we identified 287 pieces of published research on the emotional impact on rare disease families around the world. We built from that an emotional journey map. It's the 6 stages that families, when life gets medical, will go through
Right.
some phase in their life, right? From noticing change in their loved one, from the diagnostic journey, the shifting responsibilities of caregiving, the realities of full time care, the end of life worry, whether you're in an end of life
Right.
experience,
Right.
you end up in the ER,
Jeez.
you're worried about it. You've
There's
got
just so much.
right? And then finding meaning, right? So we developed this journey map. Why do we do the journey map? The journey map is the conduit for us to reach 1% of the community. So I was like,
Wow.
there's 350 million. Our North Star is we want to connect, emotionally connect 3.5 million rare givers by 2026. We want to do it mobile first, and we want to do it in language. We
Wow.
started with 7 women in our living room in 2019.
Always start in the living room. It either starts at the kitchen
7 women
table
in the
or the
living
living
room or the
room.
garage, whatever you
Right.
seven
BCRF, the Breast
women.
Cancer Research Foundation, started at the kitchen table. So there you go.
You got it. Exactly.
Right?
So,
This is where
so
it
we
always
flew
starts.
in. We flew in these 7 women. We talked to them about the emotional stages that they may have felt, asked for their input on these things. So since then, we've grown to 77,000 families,
Wow.
working with 27 hospitals, rare disease centers of excellence around the world across 6 continents. We
Wow.
have our journey map, our guidebook. Thanks to Microsoft, it's been translated into 12 languages. The Microsoft team is working on 400 languages using AI translation tools. So
Fantastic.
we're on the growth and
Wow.
get to the 3.5 million by the end of 2026. We just need the funding. So now it comes down to
Wow.
what are the challenges?
Wow.
Always funding, but
That is
we have all the
fantastic.
momentum in the
Well,
world.
and
Yeah.
it's so, I think it's so interesting because everyone I've talked to, the hundreds of founders that I've interviewed, we all set out if we can just help one family, right? We all think we can just help one. And then all of a sudden we say, well, okay, maybe it's a little bit more. And we start changing our numbers and growing. But you being a marketer were like, no, no, here's my audience. Here's you didn't look at it as I'm going to help. You've looked at the whole pie and said, give it to me and let's tackle this, which is really fantastic and interesting and unusual for my conversations because most people they start with small and then and you're like no just give me the pie, just give me the whole pie and let's just see if we can take 1% of it for now and we're going to work our way through that pie. That is really like unbelievable because you're dealing with such huge numbers and you just hear the word rare and you think it's small.
Tiny.
It makes you
Yeah.
think small, but it's not. It's just not. So talk to me since you're an entrepreneur and you obviously are um, a dreamer and a leader, and goals and vision go with leadership and entrepreneurship and dreaming, and all of those go together. So, what's the big dream for Rare Givers?
Yeah, so thank you for preparing us,
Oh, you're welcome.
as your guest to think about these things. I have to really like, do I actually say this? So I'm going to say it. So
Yes, you say it out loud because that's how we make it
we say
real,
it,
and
we
everyone
manifest,
listening is
right?
like,
We
that's
manifest.
how we do it.
Exactly. So the 3.5 million rare givers by 2026 is an important number because that's a catalyst for change. And Ginny Rometty is the CEO, ex-CEO of IBM, and she published a book called Good Power. And it's all about being the catalyst, right? So we can't solve 350 million
Right,
emotional on our own. We need to be
right.
catalyst, right? And then this needs to be like a societal awareness. This isn't
Right.
as a singular nonprofit, even in partnership with the 600 patient advocacy groups that we work with and dozens of pharmaceuticals that have supported our work and so many individual donors that have funded our work. This needs to be a societal. So my dream is an anthem like We Are the World was.
Oh, I love
My
that.
dream sits in music, and if I was just gonna,
Oh,
like, make it very specific, I would be so
right.
honored if Dolly Parton would write and sing
Oh,
a song about rare.
oh,
And then when Dolly sings that song,
wow.
someday, I think, Melinda
I
Gates
just got chills. I just
Melinda
got
Gates is
chills.
gonna hear it. Melinda Gates is gonna hear it. And she's gonna go, okay, you know what? We got to put $10 million in an endowment fund. And then Oprah Winfrey's gonna hear about that. And she's gonna rally all of her
And
supporters
she's going to talk to
to
Jeff
start
Bezos'
helping and
ex-wife.
people
And
and helping. And then I'll tell you what will happen is the Rare Givers Emotional Relief Program will get picked up by 2007 hospitals, not just 27 hospitals, but 2007 hospitals, because that's when my daughter was born. And then Clark
oh,
Farrell, who already was on the cover of People magazine talking about his amazing son, James, who has Angelman syndrome, one of the 10,000 rare diseases.
right.
Colin will sit at the table with all of these amazing influencers. We'll get Chris Hemsworth to go into Sydney Children's Hospital and see our rare disease families in Australia. Even Longoria will thank us at the L'Oreal Women of Worth event in New York. We're doing. And I will say that John Mayer will actually recognize us during a Dead and Co show at the Sphere in Las Vegas, bring up his buddy, who is an MPS boy with Hunter syndrome. And we
Oh,
will have gone completely full circle at that point. But Julia Roberts will be in the audience. She's a very public advocate for Rett syndrome families, and she will decide to direct, write, narrate, and possibly act in an Amazon Prime series that will get the
oh
word
my gosh.
out to the world. So that's my dream.
I have chills, and that is amazing. It's happening, and I just want to be invited to the Woman of Worth, and I'd like to go to the Sphere as well. So just put me
Great.
on your guest
Come,
list.
come on down.
And I'm going to say I remember when we said this and when we made this real, and I hope Dolly and Julia and Chris and Melinda are all and Oprah are all listening and getting ready to get to work to make a huge difference. So, talk to me about the life lessons you've learned on this incredible journey. I mean, what a life you have lived, and I have to say, you have such joy. You have such joy, and I know joy and grief go together. They are, as you said earlier, they are the light and the dark. But to have such joy with such loss is so impressive and inspirational to me. I mean, I just you are my people. But to keep going and doing and dreaming and just talk to me what you've learned through all of this because you've been given most people don't get these lessons as early as you got them and as many as you received with almost losing your mom in a way to addiction and losing your parents' marriage, losing your brothers, almost losing your own life or being having a moment of that fear with breast cancer. I mean, there's a lot there to unpack, Crystal. And and yet I know how wise you are because you've learned from all of these and you've used them as a Wonder Woman superpower. So talk to me about what you think the takeaways from this incredible journey that you're on.
Yeah, thank you. Well, when I was younger, 20s, 30s, 40s, I used to think that I was creating the change in the world, that I would just muscle it out and use my intellect and my network and
Right.
connections and skills and just manifest change. And, you know, like so many of us during COVID, it was just a global pandemic just humbles you in a way that you just can't deny it, right? So
Right.
we had relaunched RareGivers, it's just going to muscle out the end result, and everything was collapsing. 90% of nonprofits fail
Right.
because we can't see it through because we don't have the funding or we don't have the wherewithal. I wouldn't call them failing because fail fast is like also an entrepreneurial sort of, i-
Right.
a failure just evolves into something else. No is just another step to yes, all of these kind of business principles. But I started realizing that I can't muscle this out. Um,
Right.
and, I was looking at my mother. She's a very strong woman of faith. And I really had not cultivated that side of my heart, and my soul and my psyche, and found a place, little church by the sea in Laguna Beach, that just resonates deeply with me. The pastor there, Jeff Tackland, it's like getting a TED Talk every Sunday.
Oh, nice.
He's a deep man of faith, but he's also very philosophical, a student of C.S. Lewis. These are all things
Right.
that just really resonated. And the word surrender just kept coming up
Wow.
again and again. And
Yeah.
just,
Right.
it brings me to tears because as soon as I surrendered the outcome, then it just became an exercise in faith. And I will tell you that the miracles just start coming.
Isn't
And
it
then you start
amazing?
living in gratitude, hopping from
Mhm.
miracle to miracle, that exact right person, that
Right.
right time for a donation, that exact right offer. We just had Foundation Ibsen offer to publish 2,000 copies of our guidebook. Like, I mean,
Oh.
that's just incredible. Yeah, it just,
But the signs just happen, and when you're on the right path, and
yeah.
I mean, for me, faith is a huge piece of it. It's been my lifeline for everything. But I love the beauty of surrender because I think, when I talk about traits nonprofit founders have in common, we all are entrepreneurs. We have dreams. We None of them set out to do this. It happened, for us, and in some crazy way. But we all somehow have this faith that we have a purpose here, and that we're supposed to be doing this work, and that there's some bigger reason why we're being called to this, and we have to give and lean into it. And once we do, doors just start opening that you can't explain. And it's just kind of like click, 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 click. You're on the right path. Oh, and the miracles just start happening. And it's such a beautiful feeling because the work is so hard. The work is so hard. And then when you get a door open, you're like, oh my God, okay, I'm gonna keep walking. What's here? Door open, you know? But I love the beauty of surrender. So do you think you've changed on this journey? Do you think you've changed through all of this?
For sure. For sure. It's been transformational. We were talking about faith, so then faith becomes fun. And
Right,
I know that sounds trite, but it does become fun because you release the outcome. You're just like, oh,
right,
okay, now I'm on this journey. I mean, think how much
right,
fun we go when we're traveling and we're on journeys and we're discovering
right.
new things and we're meeting new people and we're seeing new things. And so it becomes more about the journey. And then those life lessons, we talked about Dan Pelota. He talks about being bold. If you're going to make a change in the world, you know, be bold
Right,
and
right,
and don't duplicate effort. Do the research, see who's already doing it, because we all think we're so unique and we have these new ideas, but
right.
we do. We have our own way of,
Well, yeah, there's 1.6 million of us nonprofit founders, and there's more than a handful of duplicates, but every community
right.
and every person's story is unique.
But
But
then you
yeah,
partner, right? Then even
right,
if you're in the same swim lane, then you can be like,
right.
hey, like we can partner.
Let's do this together,
Let's do it
right?
together, right? Let's move this forward. And then I think that maybe iterate, like celebrate the small little steps along the way.
Amen. Amen to
It's
that.
25 years later, basically,
Right,
is
right.
is this reflective opportunity to go, look what we've done, with Angel Aid and now with Rare Givers, but really look what we've done in community with a
Right.
coalition of people that care. You know, that's
And
that's joyful.
and
That's like,
bravo to you for that, because I do think so often that we are, as innate caregivers, as founders, we care so deeply, but we are so busy trying to drive our mission, ignite our passion with others, inspire others to adopt our excitement over this, invite them along in community, that we don't stop and celebrate the small steps and the victories. And then we suffer from burnout, right? Because we haven't celebrated ourselves. And it's not celebrating ourselves, it's celebrating our community and our work. It's not saying, hey, great job, Crystal. Hey, Heidi, you rock. It's saying, hey, we moved the needle a little bit this week. And it might have just been a meeting appointment that we have. It could just be a small donation, but it could be anything. But celebrating that is so important. And this that doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit space or not. We all have to celebrate our wins. And I think it's so important. I think it's huge. It's huge. I'm a big proponent in celebrating that stuff. So I do my weekly wins every week for Charity Matters. I do my weekly wins every week for my nonprofit. I do my weekly wins for my personal stuff every week. And as they happen, I start a notepad on Monday, and as they happen, I write them down. And I share my nonprofit ones with my board every week so they know what happened. And I do that to look at what I did, because sometimes it's just a blur, right? But I look, and then on Fridays, Fridays they're wrapped up, but I do them as they happen. And then on Fridays I look at them, and then I close my computer, my book, and I can say, okay, it's time for a little fun. It's time to put the work away. It's time to celebrate life and go live and have joy. But Crystal, you are unbelievable, such an inspiration, such a gift. I'm so inspired by you. I'm so inspired by what you're doing for these families. I'm just so grateful for you for sharing your story with us today. So please tell us how we can get involved, how we can support you, where we can find you, how we can donate, how we can help a family that might need your services. Give it all to us.
yes, yes, yes. Okay, well, um, first and foremost, I think it's so important that it be heart led, whatever your engagement is with us. So just, take a deep breath. Let's all take a deep breath.
Right. Yeah.
Take a deep breath and go, okay, I'm here now and I'm ready to give in service. And so we always talk about, feelings first. So you can look up Rare Givers on social at Rare Givers. You can look up our hashtag Rare Givers, a hashtag feelings first. You can go to our website, raregivers.global. And that's kind of the hub of where we provide relief, but we also receive support for our work. So we welcome any donation, makes a huge difference. We are in a active capital campaign right now, raising $4.5 million so that we can scale around the world and meet those big goals that we have. But along the way, it's $25 for a mother or father to join a support group. It's 1,000 for them to join a wellness retreat. It's 2,000 to get support services through the hospital network. So there's lots of incremental ways to make a huge difference. And my promise to you is this is my life calling. I'm going to be here to shepherd that investment and that faith that you have in us. But I think most important, look around and think about those people in your community, because you have rare families in your community, right?
Right.
And think about how you could just make a connection, whether it's eye contact, um, taking a deep breath and just walking up and saying hello. Be brave in your interactions because it's incredibly isolating to live with medically complex conditions. And it really means a lot to people when they are just, you know, reached out to. It's like I say, connection is the act of compassion.
It
And if we
is.
can just be a more compassionate society, then the world will right itself.
Amen to that. Well, that is connection is that it is. It's just every small act of kindness makes a difference. And that is kind of what I say at the end of every episode, because it doesn't take, I think people think that you have to be Wonder Woman, or you have to be a founder, you have to be some extraordinary person to move the needle. You just have to be kind. You just have to be kind. It's so simple, right? It's just the tiniest little action of love makes the biggest difference, right? Makes the biggest difference. So before we close, you gave us a teaser about the happy ending to the Hollywood ending to the love story. And we need to end the podcast with a happy ending. So, Crystal, what's our happy ending to this story?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I mentioned that my parents met at 15, they married at 19. They had 5 children. They lost 3 of those 4 children to Hunter syndrome, a rare genetic disease. They divorced in 1975. They each remarried, second marriages, divorced. They each remarried again, third marriages, long-term 20-year-long marriages, and then they widowed within a year of each other. The same year our daughter Chloe was born. Just the beauty of Chloe coming onto the planet, I think, brought them back together, or brought their hearts open. I'm not sure, but they
Right.
started dating again. So they were apart 35 years. They started dating again when
Oh,
Chloe was born. And just this last year, we remarried them 16 years
oh,
after the first time they got married.
oh,
In 2023, they got married again. So they're
oh,
81 and they're back together, and that's our Hollywood ending to
oh,
a
that
rare
is
love
a
story.
beautiful Hollywood ending. Oh, Crystal, I love that. Well, your life is definitely made for TV, and so is your family's. And what a beautiful, beautiful love story, and that you obviously continue to carry on with everyone you serve. Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you.
My honor.
Crystal, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for educating us, for inspiring us, for sharing so deeply with us. My heart is full, and on behalf of everyone listening, thank you for what you're doing to make the world a kinder, better place.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Charity Matters podcast. I so enjoyed talking to our guest, Crystal, about what it takes to start a business that truly changes people's lives. I think her comment about just surrendering and trusting was so inspiring and true. To learn more about these modern-day heroes and entrepreneurs, or if you'd like to reach out to us, visit us at charity-matters.com or connect with us on Instagram at Charity Matters. If you enjoyed our conversation, we would love it if you shared it with your family and friends. And please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. But more than that, thank you for caring, for believing in goodness, and for being a part of our movement. You are exactly what the world needs more of. Remember that together, we can make a difference, one small act of kindness at a time. Charity matters.